Hey, what's up everyone? This is Josh.
And Jeannie.
And we are here to pump you up. Just kidding. Saturday Night Live, old joke.
His idea.
It was her idea. I'm like, you really want to do that? I was like, I don't know. I mean, we can.
That's fun.
That's fun.
Hi, Brandy.
So we are here today, episode number 23 of Conscious Nutrition, which is our Facebook Live. Yes. We are here to talk about the stress gut. Before we go into the stress gut, let's kind of go over some logistics. Some of my favorite words, logistics. Before we get started. First thing is, you've probably noticed that we've changed the time. Hans and Franz, right? I knew you would get that, Paul. You probably appreciate that a lot. We've changed the time many times. A lot of it has to do with, of course, it revolves around our sun and the sun. So it's changing, but for now, we are going to be every Thursday is always at 12 p.m. We're back to 12 p.m.
Back to 12.
We went 12 to 2:30. Now we're back to 12. So put that in your calendar.
And again, there's still possibilities for fluctuation. We'll keep you informed. But for the most part, 12 noon is the time. So we'll be here every Thursday. If you can't make it, don't worry. Send us your questions. You can watch it on the playback on our page. You can post your comments or questions there. We'll get to them. Or we post this for the people that are anti-Facebook. We post this as well, usually a few days after, on our YouTube page, which, believe it or not, is called East West Healing. And you can check it out on our YouTube page. We have a playlist. Just being sarcastic. So you can check it out on there. So there's a million places to grasp it. As always, something we always talk about is we offer a free, complimentary, same thing, 15-minute consultation. And this is a chance for you to really kind of talk with us.
Talk with us.
Ask us your questions about what's going on with you. Learn more about our approach and how we work our clients through this approach, and see if it feels like a right fit for you. Right. It's really all we're wanting to do is kind of chat with you and get your questions answered.
Or even sometimes point you in the right direction. So I'm going to put that in the comment section right here. I'm just kind of getting it in there. So definitely take advantage of that. There we go. There it is. Boom. And lastly, from a logistical standpoint, it's really not lastly, but we have our Restoration Thyroid audio series. And obviously it's complimentary, it's free. It's a 7-part audio series on how to regulate your metabolism, aka adrenal thyroid with food. It's a 7-part audio series. It's free. So subscribe, you can download that, listen to it, get a lot of great feedback, and it's a great way to be introduced to our work, kind of understanding where we're coming from. And it's a great starting point. As well, something we've just added, and it's going to be shifted around a little bit, but you'll get also our simple ways to assess thyroid health manual as well when you opt in. So that is, we just created it. It's pretty awesome. So definitely check that out. I'm going to put that link as well in the comment section. So you can check both those links out either now or in the playback. And lastly, of course, please like this video. Please share it. Please tag people. Because, of course, from our standpoint, selfishly, it definitely benefits us. But it also helps other people because it shares the information, of course, if you're thinking of someone that might be struggling, that need that little bit of information. So it's twofold.
Or a different way to look at things. A different approach.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely.
So let's jump into it. Here we are.
So we're talking digestion and thyroid health. And I don't think this is a new conversation. I think anybody that's struggled or knows somebody that has struggled with hypothyroidism understands the gastrointestinal link to hypothyroidism. And I think, but at the same time, what we experience in our practice is that there are a lot of filling in of the blanks that we could possibly do here and helping you to better understand really what's going on, because I think the common approaches, again, might yield you some lack or less symptoms, but in the overall, again, what's really occurring? Are you getting healthy? Are you healing at the deeper level? and what happens when you come off of those types of things, you know. So we want to talk to you a little bit about and different steps that you can take to start moving in more of a deeper healing.
And I think what she just said is really important. I was talking to a client about this yesterday, and it's twofold. The first is we're not chasing symptoms, right? We're creating health. And I'll say that over and over again. And it might take time to really wrap your head around what that really means, but we're really trying to create health and say, oh, okay, stomach, there's an issue, but let's just keep feeding the body and giving it what it needs to over time regulate the systems so the body does exactly what it's designed to do and create health. If we chase symptoms, and this is what a lot of other approaches are doing, we might eliminate the symptoms, right? Which is easy, right? We take away tons of different foods that are offending to people. We put you on this very limited reductionistic diet or way of thinking in many aspects of your life. We put you on a lot of supplements and your symptoms go away. But on a deeper level, are you truly healing? No, you're status quo, right? You're not going this way. You're just like here, right? So we're trying to really get through that, break through that barrier, and pull you to the top where you can have freedom of food. You know, find enjoyment and choice and empowerment in what you're doing, right? So that's kind of the conversation we had, and I think it's really powerful.
And I think, again, we decided to talk about this because we have so many clients coming to us that are taking probiotics, that are on hydrochloric acid supplementation, that are taking all different kinds of enzymes. Proteolytic enzymes, all different kinds of digestive enzymes. And I think, again, there's a lot of money being spent. They're not doing what you expect them to be doing, and the second you come off of them, everything goes to hell. So
the one question you have to ask yourself, right, and this is a hard question because it really makes you sit down and look at yourself and say, do I have to make some changes? Is what you're doing working for you, right? And if you've been doing the same thing for a long time, right, and we hear this all the time. I've worked with so many people. I've spent so much money. I've been on this journey for 10, 20, 30 years, and I'm on medications, I'm on supplements, I'm chasing, right? You have to ask yourself, is what I'm doing working? And if it's not, you have to go a different route, right? And philosophically, a lot of those routes are the same. And we're here to really stir things up a bit and say, let's not chase symptoms and look at dysfunction. Let's look at how the body works. And that's kind of where we're going to start today. So when we look at the digestive system, right, even though the body's a system of systems, right, we know that it's a top-down approach, right? How the pH of our system in our mouth, how the pH of our stomach, etc., they all feed one another. So essentially we know it's cause and effect. If there's a problem with the large intestine, you have to go upward, above to see what's going on. Usually it's not the large intestine that's the problem. So when we look at, let's just say we're looking at the stomach, we know that our stomach releases hydrochloric acid in a functional, state. So we can break down food. And mainly so we can break down protein, which stimulates pepsin, so we can break the protein down even more. And then, of course, we're eating proteins and carbs. Those move to the small intestine, right? The pH in the stomach, which regulates hydrochloric acid and pepsin, allows the small intestine to stimulate pancreatic enzymes so we can break down carbohydrates. It's a top-down approach. It's like if this is working, the pH is right, stimulates the small intestine, stimulates the parts of the small intestine, the large intestine, etc. And that is balance, right? It's a domino effect. But if the pH in our stomach is off, if it's too high, what happens? Well, this is interesting. We know that whether we're taking medications, those can be obviously acid suppressing drugs. It could be many other drugs in themselves that have these types of effect. It could be from a low animal diet, being vegan, and of course stress, which of course both of those are stress, among other things. We know that the pH in the gut is thrown off. And this is huge because our body, believe it or not, runs on pH. Every system in the body runs on pH, inside, outside the cell, the GI system, respiration, everything is regulated by pH. And no, the pH diets don't work,
well,
right?
That's what I was just going to say. When you think about the pH, or the alkaline acid balance, it's different in all the different systems of the body. So it's really about starting with the digestive system and upregulating hydrochloric acid production, which essentially is going to, again, like Josh says, feed everything below and normalize absorption, breakdown, assimilation.
Right.
Or the other way around.
In a little tangent, the one thing that regulates pH in the entire body is not the pH diet, is respiration. Respiration at the cell level and respiration at the ventilation level, right, through the nose. That is something you can't deny. Biochemically, that is what regulates pH, right? And we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say it significantly correlates with, obviously, the ability to produce hydrochloric acid because of the things that are reducing that ability.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So if the pH in the gut is off, right, we should say stomach, it's high. What happens? We're not releasing hydrochloric acid, which throws off. No, it would be high. pH is high.
Would be high.
Yeah. So hydrochloric acid is low. What happens? Now we don't release pepsin, so we can't break down protein. The protein kind of just sits there. It putrefies. What happens? Now it seeks into the blood. And this is when we get immune system reactions. And this is when we get leaky gut syndrome, dysbiosis, we start having food intolerances, we start ending up with autoimmune issues from acute to chronic, right? Secondly, we can't release pancreatic enzymes because it's a top-down approach. So that doesn't stimulate pancreatic enzymes. So we can not only break down our food, but absorb our food. And this is a problem because if the carbs don't break down, we can't absorb them. What happens? Number one, we can't regulate stress. Number two, we can't absorb the sugars that are in them to regulate thyroid hormone production. And three, we create bacterial overgrowth. What happens? The amount of good bacteria goes down, the amount of bad bacteria goes up. Where does this lead most people? This leads people towards food intolerance testing. This leads people towards autoimmune diets, AIP I think it's called. This leads people towards FODMAP for SIBO, Candida, autoimmune issues. The list goes on and on. So now you're going down the rabbit hole and chasing symptoms versus creating health. So what I just said in the last 2 to 3, 4, 5 minutes is super, super important to listen to and re-listen to. So we do have a question. Do you recommend HCl supplements? No, we don't. No. And we'll get to that. Because if you think about it, we're looking at the state of our body. It's our being, the state of our being, right? And we know when we're not producing hydrochloric acid because we're understanding function. Like I just talked about. What is going on? There is a stress. Do we know if it's physical? Are we overworking? Are we not working out enough? Do we know if it's emotional? Of course, it always is. It could be many things, right? But it could be lifestyle. But it's hard for people to grasp what lifestyle modifications are. And it's a big demon for people because they have to change. And that's hard for people because they think they can't change. They don't have enough time. There's no way possible they could change, right? You can say something.
Well, I am, but I'm trying to still think about how I want to put it. Because I think, again, the reason you're taking hydrochloric acid, and this is probably really obvious, is because you can't break down your foods.
Right.
So the better approach, and we may be getting into this, I'm sure we will, is going to be using foods that are more digestible to where you are. And
Yes.
keep in mind that you can't have a stress on the gut without having a stress on your thyroid function, all of which work together. So that is how we help our clients identify that. And so when it comes to foods, and again, something we'll be getting into, and I just want to...
Hashtag.
Yeah.
We'll be getting into it.
Well, there's just so many layers and they all work together. So how do you really want to, bring it to the attention? But I think, again, the point is that, and so the goal would there then be to eat foods that are more available for you to digest to further take some burden off of the system without putting
So if we're not producing hydrochloric acid, and we know this, right, essentially the state of our body is in a conservation mode, survival mode, stress state, right? It's almost like the gears in your body are slowing down to help you conserve energy because you're in a stress state. You're running from a lion in a sense. So physiologically, every day, it's almost like you're running a marathon, right? So you take hydrochloric acid to bring us back to homeostasis, right? There's a mismatch there, right? It's almost like your body's going in reverse and you throw it in drive. There's a problem there. You're trying to push it one way when your body is trying to keep you alive or help you survive because of the state that you're in. So it doesn't help. And that's why people go, I took 1, I took 2, I took 3, I took 4, I took 12, and it didn't work, right? It's not going to work because you don't need them. Because your own body is not producing it because the state that you're in. And your body, which is nature, is much more powerful than a man-made substance, right? And that's why we quote Andrew Taylor Still from the 1800s. If you give the body what it needs, nature will do the rest. Now here's the problem. Most people do gut diets. They chase the symptoms. They take the supplements. They do the labs upon labs, take more supplements, etc. They buy expensive cereals. One of my clients, she'll probably laugh at this, bought this, I forget the name of it actually, but it was to help you poop, and I think it was called like, I have to look it up. It's a funny name of a cereal. It's a high fiber cereal. It tastes like crap, but you can buy it online. It's like, you know, poop again or something like that. It's funny, but like, there's so many things out there that people are buying, right? But you have to really think about the state of your body, right? And that's hard to do. That's hard for a lot of people to do because we're so disconnected, right? And we're in the state of almost like paralysis, right? Now, we always talk about how do we tap into the autonomic nervous system? How do we tap in to regulate that sympathetic stress state and push ourselves more parasympathetic, or not even push ourselves more parasympathetic? How do we quiet down the excitement of the sympathetic to automatically strengthen the parasympathetic, which is vagal tone, right? The easiest way to do that, of course, it would be lifestyle modifications, right? Our habits, our rituals, when we go to bed, when we get up, are we doing breathing? Paying attention to if what we're doing is working for us. We had a hard day at work, we're going to go work out, right? That's hard for people to do. The easiest way is food and blood sugar regulation, right? Because stress is the perceived need for sugar. Bottom line. Anytime you're stressed, right? The body, right, Lorraine, that's so true. You know, anytime the body is stressed, it needs more energy, which is sugar, right? If we don't have it, we go into gluconeogenesis, we break down proteins, which is our tissues, into sugar, and this could be a very dangerous process if we're in this state chronically. So how do we tap in? And we do that with food, right? And it's an easy way, it's a tangible way for people to say, okay, I have control, I have a choice, I'm feeling more empowered to really be able to control the stress reaction in my body. And when you start feeling better, then you're more empowered to make those changes in your life because now you're seeing the results. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So when we regulate our blood sugar, what we're doing is we're quieting down the excitement of I still don't know how to pronounce it. I apologize. But we appreciate all your support that you've given us. We take the burden off the adrenals, right? We take the burden off all that excess cortisol, adrenaline. We take our body out of that state of gluconeogenesis because we're bringing in sugar, or we're storing it. Our cells are much more sensitive to it, so the cells will take in that sugar. So it's really important to regulate your blood sugar from an autonomic nervous system standpoint.
Well, and to heal, and I think that's something that's really being overlooked in most approaches, is that here we have a system that's in total chaos and we're plugging in. This is something we've talked about. We're plugging with all different kinds of things and we're trying to heal in a state of chaos. Right. It does not work. So again, going back to what Josh says, we have to gain regulation, and one of the most powerful ways to do that is through your food. So again, now we're upregulating digestive enzyme production, healing what's going on there, being now able to absorb our foods. And I think, again, what people don't realize is that here the body is in a state of imbalance, which means it's been stealing from Peter to pay Paul. And the things that we need
Peter and Paul.
In order to heal, we can't absorb, we can't retain.
Right.
You know, and that's why, again, there comes the supplementation, where if we look at the state of the body, begin to assess where that is, understand it at a different level, and then begin to nurture it back to the state of health, it just is a completely different experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does this mean? Now, we know a lot of people gravitate towards, even if they're not taking supplements, or even if they are, they say, well, carbs are bad. Carbs make us fat, right? Mm-hmm. Carbs affect our insulin levels. They give us fatty liver, insulin resistance, autoimmunity, the list goes on, right? Well, the myths go on. Secondly, people gravitate towards proteins and vegetables, right? But when you look at our approach, we're talking about using very highly digestible and metabolic proteins, right, that the body can easily break down. Secondly, we're looking at the types of carbs people are taking in. And this is even more important from a digestive perspective. Of course, not to play the downplay proteins, because, you know, I would say that 99% of the people we assess are not eating enough protein. We don't eat enough protein. What happens? We're not going to produce enough hydrochloric acid because it stimulates hydrochloric acid. This is why a lot of vegans have GERD. Serious GERD. It's not because they have too much. It's because they don't have enough hydrochloric acid, because they're not eating true proteins, right, to stimulate its production, right? Secondly, we're recommending carbs. And these are digestible carbs. These are metabolic carbs that help us regulate thyroid health, regulate cell metabolism, respiration, which helps us regulate the pH of the body and the gut, which help us store glycogen to regulate our blood sugar, to balance the autonomic nervous system, which is stress, and take the burden off the adrenals. And this is important when we're talking about gut health, right? Now, I posted something about this on our Instagram page at Real Food Gangsters. That's our Instagram page. That one of our recommendations when people have gut issues or are hypometabolic or even healthy is to eat less vegetables, right? And people went nuts. Oh, vegetables are healthy. They're loaded with minerals and yada, 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 right? So are vaccines. But at the same time, when you look at vegetables, we know that most vegetables are people are eating with gut problems.
So one of the most common things that we hear, and sorry to interrupt you, is I've stopped eating my vegetables, I can't poop anymore.
Right.
Interesting. Well, what they don't understand is these insoluble fibers that we can't break down in a compromised state is acting almost like a roto-rooter, or what will like a wire brush scraping the intestinal wall. It's very aggressive. So there, you know, all of your fruits and vegetables have fibers in them. Soluble fibers, insoluble fibers, and whatnot. So I just want to speak of that, because I think, again, it's a common scenario as we begin to remove these things that are making you believe that they're what's keeping you regular. And they could to some degree, but at what cost?
Right.
Right.
But you're really seeing the true state of your metabolism when you cut them out. So it's kind of bad, but also good. You're seeing really where your metabolism is and how hypometabolic you are, because thyroid hormone production regulates the motility and mobility, which is peristalsis of the gut. So a lot of people are eating these vegetables which are high in insoluble fiber. Kale, spinach, all these greens that people are eating, raw or cooked, doesn't matter, right? And these are hard for us to break down, as Jeannie said. We don't have the enzymes to break them down, and plus they're very abrasive to the gut. Now, when you look at the lot of the foods that we're recommending, beside the metabolic aspects of them to help us regulate, you know, all the things I just talked about, we're talking about soluble fibers. We're talking about a lot of the tubers, the squashes, you know, some of the fruits we're recommending, the roots, etc., which contain a lot of soluble fiber, which contain a lot of antibacterial, antifungal properties, which are 10 times better than vegetables, right? So not only are we getting some fiber, we're getting some fiber that we can actually break down, that can actually help us a lot, but we're getting the metabolic effects of it. You can still get all the same minerals that you need, etc., etc. And you're not getting the damaging side effects from the vegetables. Sounds crazy, I know.
And you're healing in the long term. There's just so many benefits.
Right.
To it.
You're not sacrificing your long-term health for short-term gain. I think we have a question here. Where do you stand on resistant starches such as green banana, flour, cassava, and what keeps you so excited to cook beans? Resistant starches, green banana, flour. We recommend, when it comes to fruits, that all fruits have to be ripe. When they're ripe, nature ripens fruit for a reason, so animals will eat them, right? So the trees can reproduce. So we recommend when people eat fruit to take the burden off the GI system, but also to allow us to absorb the sugars, which are now digestible. Always eat ripe fruits, not green bananas, almost brown bananas, ripe apples, all these different fruits that are out there. If they're not ripe, we always recommend, obviously, to wait or to cook them down. That's the most important thing. Take the skin off the apple, cook them down in a pan with a little bit of butter and cinnamon. You can do anything with vegetables, fruit, sorry. I just posted something last week on Instagram about these strawberries we had, you know, and they were going bad. Most people throw them away. Cut them up, wash them off, throw them in a pan, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of coconut oil, cook them down. Now you have this nice compote that you can throw in your yogurt, right? With a little bit of gelatin. Makes it nice, delicious. So there's many things that you can do with that. When it comes to like fermented foods, we're not a huge fan of those because of the high lactic acid content, which is a metabolic burden to our system. Now, in small amounts, sure, it's really not an issue. In excessive amounts, it can be a problem because now our liver tries to take that lactic acid and convert it to usable energy, and it does that by stealing glycogen from the liver, which most people are not storing, so now it's a metabolic burden.
And I think as far as, you know, the different sprouted beans, things like that, I think that number one, if you have significant digestive issues, they're just best to avoid right now. When you come back to a place of more homeostasis and balance, if you want to include them in your diet, taking those steps to soak them and roast them is essential. But I don't think that they should be considered a protein. I think they're going to stand more as a carbohydrate in any one meal. And yes, you're right. Some of the reasons that people are doing things like the green bananas and whatnot is because they're starchier with less sugar. However, again, you are consuming a food that is not in its ripened state, which comes with toxic chemicals.
It's not digestible.
It's not digestible. So I think that, again, you have to really think about whether or not consuming unripened food is really important, is really a supportive to our health. Cassava, things like that, I think they're great tools to use, but they are extremely high in carbohydrates, so you have to do it in moderation with certain things.
So with the fruit, here's the thing. Bananas are a touchy subject because they are starchy. Starchy anything is hard to break down for our system, especially if we're in a compromised state, right? Root vegetables, they're hard to break down. That's why we have to overcook them to make them more digestible. Maybe eat a little bit less of them from the beginning. Bananas are tough as well. For some people, they don't work. You know, they're hard to break down. A lot of the times I recommend people start with half a banana. They need to be very, very ripe, or if it doesn't work, you're too afraid of whatever part of it, the sugar or whatever, use other fruits. There's so many other fruits. I mean, now it's like there's nectarines and plums and pears.
Depending upon where you are. But I think in most places, but I think if somebody tends towards insulin resistance, that number one, you have to be careful with the carb choices that you're making and staying with things that are more on the lower end, like your winter squashes, or even you can combine berries with slices of different, pineapple or the more sugary type of carbohydrates. But bananas, for some people that are really, really sensitive towards hypoglycemia or insulin resistance, again, maybe not the best choice, or maybe just a quarter of that with the meal. You have to go in very small amounts.
Here's the thing. I posted 2 posts yesterday about sugar and fructophobia on our Instagram page at Real Food Gains. So go check that out, because here's the thing. When people have leaned towards insulin resistance, really what they're saying is their cells are no longer sensitive to insulin anymore. And that's a problem. They're more resistant to it. The body doesn't want to be in that position because it's inefficient and it's very expensive energetically. Everything comes down to energy in the body, right? In a healthy body, when we eat sugars, it will not store it or convert it to fat. It's impossible in a healthy system. Our body wants to store it and convert it and use it for energy in the cell to keep that feedback cycle going so we can produce energy, right? Anytime our body is in a stress state, meaning we're not storing energy or converting energy, we're producing lactic acid, right? Our pH is off, however you want to look at it. We have a low CO2 tolerance. We're in a state of gluconeogenesis. What's happening is we're converting proteins to sugar. So now our cells are very or less sensitive to insulin, right? So now our cells are not uptaking sugar, right? Because of the state, like I said in the beginning, that we are in. So, as we've always say, it's not the food, it's the state of our physiology that's the problem. So how do we rewind that? Number one, we go slow. Number two, we need to use more fruits. Why? Fruits meaning fruits, but also things like sweet potatoes and squashes, because they contain more fructose. Fructose is easily stored in the liver, right? It can be converted as usable energy very easily. It doesn't stimulate insulin, and it can get in our cells when glucose can't, when we're in this state, to upregulate energy production to keep that cycle going. So we actually need the fruit, you just have to go slow. Like I told the client, maybe you don't eat a whole apple, maybe you eat half apple,
Right.
maybe you eat a quarter of an
a
apple.
couple slices of
Yeah,
an apple.
you just have to go slow, but the only way to unwind that is to do that. It's physiology, it's biochemistry. There's no way to deny that. The problem is people want to cut these foods out and say they're better. They're not. They just ended that compensation and they're staying right here, right? They're not getting any worse, but they're not getting any better physiologically.
And I think I want to remind people of that, is that we are adaptive. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We adapt out of health, which means we can adapt back into it.
Right.
But it's an accumulative process. So you don't get here overnight. You get here through years and years and years and years and years of compensation. So keep that in mind as you're making these changes. Yes, things are going to stabilize and shift quite dramatically in a short period of time, but the real healing is going to happen over a consistent period.
It takes time. I have this conversation with clients all the time. Last night, today, what we're trying to do is help people really heal at a deep level. And it takes time, because what we're doing is health, years of compensation, 30 years, right? We're slowly trying to reverse that through decompensation, getting your body out of that compensatory mode and back into that adaptation mode. And that takes time, right? Every diet out there claims you're going to heal in 30 days, 3 months. Impossible. If you're 20, 30, 40 years, it's taking you 20, 30, 40 years to get like this, right? So it takes time to unwind that. And we're trying to do that with food, and it takes time, but you will truly heal. Is it all roses? No. Are there going to be some speed bumps? Sure. You're going to have to unlearn 100%. But as long as you go slow and you listen to your body, right, it works. Is it uncomfortable? Yeah, you're stepping out of your comfort zone, right? But it's a new way of thinking, and it works.
But it's also in the way that we approach it. It puts you in the driver's seat. Because as Josh was saying earlier, it's like most people don't really know or how to respond to making lifestyle modifications or how to change their food or whatnot. But as you begin to observe it and tune into it and apply the tools that we have to offer, you are now, it's your choice. You have a choice now because you now see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So now you get to go and you get to apply that, and as you prepare your meals, your frequency in your meals, the foods that you eat, it's like all there.
Right. And so Ing had a great question, and I want to get to this because she says, I'm imaging starting a fire in a fireplace with poor draw, a downdraft, and with wet cold wood. We want to just pile on more kindling like sugar. Here we go.
This is good.
This is good.
This is an analogy we use with our clients all the time. Yeah.
So here's the thing. Let's correlate vegetables, raw vegetables, nuts and seeds, right? All these offending foods with wet wood, right? So we always talk about a cold house, whether it be in Alaska or California, cold house, right? We have the stove. We have to heat the house. Right? We put a little kindling on the fire in the morning, maybe 6 hours later, maybe it's wet wood, whatever. It's not going to allow us to produce energy to heat the house, the body, metabolism, thyroid, etc. Right? It's not going to warm us up. It's not going to allow us to store energy. But if we take away those offending foods, if we take away the vegetables and nuts and seeds, etc., or maybe we make sure we overcook the vegetables so they're much more digestible and we still cut back on them. Or maybe we make sure when we have a vegetable that it's overcooked and we're having it with complementing it with a metabolic carb like a fruit or a root and of course a protein to make that meal much more metabolic, so we're regulating our blood sugar, affecting the autonomic nervous system, etc. Maybe we're peeling them, destemming them, we're never having them raw, so we're pulling away all that dry wood, and now we're putting in a nice big amount of wood in the morning to regulate and produce energy. We're doing that every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day to regulate our blood sugar, to produce heat, to regulate the metabolism. So we're pulling away the wet wood and pulling in wood that the fire can use so we can produce the energy.
So early in the earlier phases of healing, you are consciously, intentionally taking steps to do for your body what it is not able to do for itself, to provide for your body what it does not have on board to regulate you. That is essentially what you're doing. And in doing that, you're helping your body recover that ability. You're restoring that ability. You're adapting it back into a state of health.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. And Inkboard, you can absolutely call us, but I think this is an important question for everybody. So please don't feel like an imposition.
Yeah.
I think it's great for everybody to hear
It's
that.
crazy. People just go, oh my God, but trust me. Is it going to be uncomfortable at the beginning? Sure. Do we go slow? 100%. Is it challenging? Yes. But you have to ask your question. Go back to the beginning of this, Facebook Live. Is what you're doing working for you, right? Everyone asks yourself that. Because if you've been fighting these bugs, Candida, SIBO, for 10 years, right? You've been trying every supplement, the best supplement, different diets. You have to create change. And it's scary because everyone has this fear around sugar. They have all these fears around sugar, which are false. They're 100% false. Does sugar cause you to gain weight? Sure. In an energy surplus, when we can't process it. But an energy surplus in anything will make you fat, right? It's not the sugar, it's the energy surplus. What did I say? Everything comes down to energy. It's meeting our body's energetic needs, right? Some people need more sugar, carbs than others, right? Some people need more protein. So if you take in too many carbs and you don't need them, you're going to gain weight. It's about finding the right amount for you over time, right? It takes a long time to find that amount, but initially you're just regulating. You're taking baby steps, and it's a process and it's a journey, and you're creating that story throughout that process. So hopefully what we talked about makes sense. Hopefully it's making you ask yourself some questions, especially in what I'm doing working for you. Hopefully it's really kind of making you want to download our Restoration Thyroid audio series that's in our comment section, as well as set up your free 15-minute consult, as well as maybe pay attention and come here every single Thursday and we talk about these things, because we believe it is very powerful. We know it's very powerful. We hear it from people all the time. We see the results that our people are getting.
I was talking to a client today, our second consult, and I'm just like, it never ceases to amaze me, even after over a decade of doing this, how powerful our food is.
It's amazing.
I mean, she's just like transformed over a couple weeks, and obviously there's a ton more work to do, but it's profound. It is extremely profound, and even though we see it on the daily, it's still just like, this is huge. So,
is it against the norm?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But is the norm working?
Not.
I would say no. Right? If you look at the history of disease, you look at the history of symptoms, you look at the history of illness, it's getting worse and worse and worse.
Well,
I can tell you, I've been doing this industry 18 years, and people are getting worse and worse and worse. They're not getting better, right? So a client said to me, it's like, you guys are like a hidden gem. It's like, it's a bummer you're just not out there more. It's like, it's hard because you have all these big diets out there because everyone's so focused on weight loss and not health. But the thing is this, all those diets are getting bigger and bigger, and it's going to come full circle because it's going to blow up, and we're going to be right here to catch everyone to help them work through that. And we're already doing it, right? So it's important to realize that you have to change to create change. I say this all the time. So if what you're doing is not working, think about picking the phone up and calling us or sending us an email, because maybe we can point you in the right direction, or maybe what we have to offer working with you is what you're really looking for, or maybe it's what you need. Yeah. I think we have one more question. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Ying. I think it's a good idea. I think it'll help you. When we're not the only ones saying this. You study the work of course, Ray Peat. You study the work of Dr. Weatherby. You study the work of Chris Krasser. He talks about this stuff in a lot of his work with vegetables. We're not the only ones talking about it. We're just the only ones that really have created a philosophy around it, and honestly have the balls to really come forward to say this is what is not working, right? Because we're really truly focused, and I'm not saying other people are not, but we're truly focused on helping people heal and helping people give their body what they need so they can be empowered, so they don't need us anymore, right? And that's what it's all about. So anyway, reminder, 15-minute consult, Restoration Thyroid audio series in the comments. We will be here next Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific Coast time. You can rewatch us on our Facebook group, as a Facebook page, as well as our YouTube page at East West Healing. Yep. You good?
Yep. Thanks
all right, guys. Have a great week. We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.